At sea wars rarely begin with dramatic declarations. They begin with seconds, a radar lock that lasts too long, a warning shot misunderstood, a commander forced to decide with incomplete information. In this scenario, the unthinkable happens. US and Venezuelan warships open fire in the Caribbean Sea. The first exchange would almost certainly be brief, localized and defensive. A Venezuelan patrol vessel activates fire control radar or launches a short-range missile. In response, a US destroyer operating under established rules of engagement fires back immediately. From that instant forward, the situation shifts from provocation to armed conflict. Once weapons are released, restraint disappears. US naval doctrine prioritizes force protection above all else. The moment American sailors are threatened, commanders are authorized to neutralize the source of danger decisively. This does not mean escalation for its own sake. It means eliminating risk before it spreads. Within seconds, the Aegis combat system aboard US destroyers would fully activate. Sensors fuse radar, electronic warfare data and satellite inputs into a single, rapidly updating picture of the battlefield. Venezuelan ships involved in the exchange would already be classified, tracked and targeted. At this stage, there's no confusion, there's no warning phase left. The objective becomes clear: stop further attacks immediately. This first exchange would likely be limited to surface-to-surface and air defense weapons, but the political consequences would already be enormous. Once shots are fired, both governments are locked into narratives that are difficult to reverse. Even if commanders want to stop, momentum becomes the enemy of restraint. Yet this is only the opening moment. What matters most is not the first missile, but what follows in the minutes after. Once hostilities begin, the US Navy's response would be swift, coordinated, and overwhelming, not because it seeks war, but because its doctrine is built to end fights quickly. Within minutes, carrier strike group commanders would elevate readiness to the highest level. Fighter aircraft, already on alert, would launch immediately. F-A-18 or F-35 jets would establish full air dominance over the engagement zone, denying Venezuelan forces any freedom of maneuver from the sky. Simultaneously, US destroyers and cruisers would engage using long-range precision weapons. The goal would not be destruction for spectacle, but mission, kill-disabling enemy ships, sensors, propulsion and weapons so they can no longer fight. Electronic warfare would play a decisive role. Venezuelan radar communications and targeting systems would be jammed or deceived, creating confusion and delay at the worst possible moment. In modern naval combat, information dominance often matters more than firepower itself. Crucially, US commanders would avoid unnecessary escalation. No immediate strikes on land targets, no attacks beyond the maritime battle space unless ordered. The objective would be containment, ending the threat at sea while preserving political space for de-escalation. For Venezuelan forces, the imbalance would become clear almost immediately. Their ships operate with limited sensor range, aging systems, and little redundancy. Against a fully networked US strike group, they would struggle to coordinate, communicate, or survive sustained engagement. This phase would likely last less than 30 minutes, and yet the most dangerous weapon in this conflict may not be visible on the surface at all. As fighting unfolds at sea, pressure explodes on land. In Caracas, political leadership would face a crisis. Losing ships, or even having them publicly disabled, would be a severe blow to national prestige. Domestic audiences might demand defiance, but professional military leaders would understand the reality continuing means disaster. In Washington, the priority would be containment. The US would emphasize that it acted in self-defense, releasing data and timelines to control the narrative. Diplomats would immediately engage regional partners and international organizations to prevent broader escalation. Russia and China would issue statements calling for restraint, but neither would intervene militarily. This is not their war, and the imbalance is obvious. Latin American governments would quietly urge de-escalation, fearing regional instability. Behind closed doors, communication channels would activate. Military-to-military hotlines exist precisely for moments like this. A ceasefire at sea would likely be negotiated quickly, even if public rhetoric remains heated. The fighting would stop, not because one side was destroyed, but because continuing serves no strategic purpose. When the smoke clears, the lasting impact would not be measured in wreckage, but in deterrence. For Venezuela, the lesson would be harsh. Naval power is not demonstrated by proximity or bravado. It is sustained by training, integration, and realistic assessments of capability. A short clash would likely set back Venezuelan maritime credibility for years. For the United States, the incident would reinforce a core truth of modern naval warfare. Dominance is proven not by aggression, but by control. The ability to absorb provocation, respond decisively, and then stop is what defines true sea power. Most importantly, the encounter would serve as a warning to every navy operating in contested waters today. Modern warships are not isolated platforms. They are nodes in a vast lethal network. Challenging them without understanding that network is not courage, it is miscalculation. And that is why such wars rarely happen. Not because they're impossible, but because the outcome is known long before the first shot is fired